All right, we're on. We're recording. Hey, everybody, Spencer Combs here, and I have the fabulous Kalendra Thompson here with us, and she's been so generous to spend a little bit of time with us. We're still chuckling a little bit because I said, "Are you ready to go?" And she's like, "Let's go." And that's probably what you would expect from someone who calls themselves, AKA, a coach. So I love Kalendra, and I love what she does. So real fast, Kalendra, tell us where you are and what you do real fast.
So again, my name is Kalendra Thompson. I am in Sumter, South Carolina. By title, I am a mortgage loan officer, but I always say that I am a storyteller and a problem solver. I help connect people with the best loan programs that fit their needs and their specific scenarios, and make sure they're educated throughout the process, equipped with the tools that they need to be successful, and empower them that they're making the best decision for their family, whether it's to purchase or refinance a home.
Love it. Well, if anyone's wondering why I would have reached out and said, "Hey, Kalendra, why don't we interview you?" I'm going to share with you one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you is because I've actually known you a lot longer than just last year, from a long time ago. And we got reconnected last year. You managed to come to one of my programs, and I was excited to see you. We kind of reconnected there. But you had just connecting the dots. You and I really haven't talked about all the details, but I know that you had a period in your life or a season where things went down. You came back up in 2019. I don't know, maybe you can correct me, but it felt like 2019 was a bit of a defining year for you. You seemed to kind of really got into your own and started doing some stuff. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. In all 2019, I definitely came into my own. That didn't come without a lot of trials. Actually, 2019 was a challenging year for me, especially at the beginning of the year. But decisions that I made in January, certainly by the end of the year in the last quarter, certainly helped the year to end off with an absolute bang. So,
right.
So yeah.
Love that stuff. And that's so much of what I do. That's why there was an attraction to having a conversation with you, because I'm always wanting to figure out how do people move forward when things aren't necessarily going the way they thought they should or they could. Their plans didn't go the way they planned and so on. But you seem to be in a position now where things are going much better. You're at least got yourself moving forward here in 2020.
Yeah, for the most part. I think a lot of it too is sometimes that I truly believe in faith, and I believe in the power of the universe. And I believe that sometimes we have to make decisions for ourselves, and sometimes the universe shows up for us, even when we don't know how to fully show up for ourselves.
Right.
And so I definitely think that has a lot to do with it. And that Kalendra certainly has some work to do to keep things going, momentum. But yes, a foundation has been laid, and hopefully can continue to build upon that.
So let's just talk numbers real quick, because a lot of people that are going to watch this or listen to this are probably going to be some sort of a business person, business minded. And I've always felt like the personal and the professional, they have to work in harmony. But just from the business perspective, can you tell us a little bit about how the year started and how it ended for you, and give us a benchmark for production?
From beginning to end of 19?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So actually at the beginning of 2019, I was salaried employed in the mortgage industry by a major company, where my salary there was $71,000, I believe it was. And I had the potential to earn bonuses as well. I actually resigned from that position in March. And then by choice, I did not work from March until June, when I signed on to Movement Mortgage, or signed on to my current company. Production-wise, I didn't actually start producing with my current company until September. And so between September and December, I closed $557,000 in volume in September. In November, it was 787,000. October, sorry, it's 747,000. And then for December, we ended up at 1.4 million.
So 1.4 for that period of time, but you started in June, but you really didn't start seeing any production until August, and then
August, September, October. Yeah, so August was my first actually production month.
yeah.
And so we went from 557,000 to, by the end of the year, my closed volume just for December was 1.4 million.
Gotcha. So really, then I don't know necessarily what your goal was, but you're obviously on an upward trend, especially in a month when most people say, "Oh, well, nobody's buying a house, nobody's
Right.
closing on houses in December."
Right. Right. So that in itself is a blessing.
Yeah.
But yes, and so this month, tracking at this point, we're at 994,000, which is certainly depressing to be $6,000 short of $1 million, but that's what we are for this month. So
Well, so let's rewind the clock for just a minute so that nobody loses this. You took a calculated risk and stepped out and banked on yourself.
correct.
Is that a fair way of saying it?
That's a very, very fair way of saying it. I no longer felt like I fit into the conventional mold or whatever spaces that I was in. So I made a conscious decision to remove myself, to then attract what was for me. And so, yes.
Love it. Love it. So I'm going to run through, I do in all these case studies that I do, I go through 5 areas of business. It's something we cover in the Qualified Champion, the business version. And I kind of want to get a sense for, 2019 was a building year for you, getting settled in. And then 2020, I'm sure you come into it with some adjustments. So that's really what I want to look for. Kind of, here's where we were, and here's what we've done differently. Just by the way, this is obviously, since it's being recorded, it's probably going to be out there for posterity. So this right now, we're talking, it's the middle of January in 2020, so it's early in the year. So let me just jump into it. Is that okay?
Yes, perfect.
All right. So the first subject I usually talk about is, we call it excellence. And that has to do with the culture, the mindset, the belief systems, if you will, about what and where we are. So it tends to be really hard to explain that one. Tell me a little bit about what you think 2019, where you were in our culture, and then what adjustments you've made for 2020.
I felt like 2019, I was honestly in what I would call like a forced survival mode, with some of the challenges that I faced on a personal level, and then choosing to step into a role that required me to operate on a higher energy, and to be a different person. I think I intentionally chose to put the blinders on in 2019 and really just kind of dive into the systematic culture that was with my company. So I kind of drank the Kool-Aid a little bit. I just had a mindset where I just kind of knew what I had to do. Mm-hmm. Going in 2020, I think what I have respected is the fact that mindset paid off in a way, and that I don't want to become complacent in that, but also that in 2020, I want to be more of a participant in creating the success, not necessarily. You got to do double the work, you know what I mean, to build on, and so be more of a participant in that as it relates to my habits, my morning routine, as it relates to having, a schedule, as it relates to my mindset, what I'm speaking, who I'm speaking to, things like that. So
you've been much more mindful and intentional as you move into 2020 with your culture, if you will, your mindset, and just overall belief system. You're being
correct.
Much more mindful and purposeful with, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Awesome. So, and again, that one always tends to be a little bit of the one that people have a hard time articulating. And yet it's the one that when I walk into an organization and start talking to people, they're all so focused on production, they lose sight of the positive piece, a mindset. And so they end up, those are the ones that get burned out, where if we get them, we teach that in the Qualified Champion. I don't know if you remember that, but you go from being productive into a purposeful quadrant. And I love the fact that you're focused on balancing both of them. So shifting into the conversation around sales, right? So we talk about exposure. That it's not just sales; it's really marketing and branding and prospecting. All those terms kind of fall into that one category. You have done a really good job over the last 6 months, 8 months that I've known or seen you, watched you online. You have gotten really good at getting people to connect with you, and you've used everything from Cody, your dog, to actual pictures of you and customers and clients. You've done a really good job there. Tell me a little bit about where you're getting business from, and maybe tell us a little bit about the social media aspect, because you from my perspective, you've done a lot there.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Yeah, social media has been very important to my sales aspect. I do have a brand that I am looking to build, as the mortgage coach. Don't know if we can see, but
Yeah, look at that.
my branding is there. So I do have a brand that I'm trying to build, and the best way to facilitate that is through social media. Most of my leads actually still come from real estate agents with direct referrals. So in a sense that at some point in time, I've had some sort of conversation to build a relationship with them. What I have found though, and I think it's an anomaly of some sort, but I really didn't have to do too much of the whole courting real estate agents, which is, very popular in our industry. I think because of the niche market that I serve, because of specific demographics, and because of what was missing in our existing market, it almost became like a domino effect that if I met with one person, they told three more. And so it became an instance where I would get I get leads that I actually did not physically foster. I do get social media leads. I've had, I would say 10% of my clients, which is a pretty strong number, I think for our industry have come directly from social media directed, whether it was, hey, I saw a video, someone shared this, a friend inbox after they saw me doing something, someone wrote under a comment on a closing picture that say, hey, I want that too.
Right.
So it's been a mixture. My desire, I think, is to be more, I would love to have more brand awareness and for my clients to be direct to consumer, and not necessarily always primarily rely on the real estate relationship for that.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from, because I do know that the majority of prospecting for mortgage originators is in fact getting that referral source from real estate agents. So they build really strong relationships with multiple agents, and then of course they get leads that way. So what you're saying is you've done a good bit of that, but you've also done a really good job with your social media. Here's a question. So I got so many questions actually, because number one, you basically are just out, you just put yourself out there, and there's so many business owners that would be so freaked out to say, to tell somebody that, this personal thing that just happened in their life. Are you just not that concerned about it, or did you have a moment where you just said, yeah, forget it, just go with it?
I'm a transparent person by nature. I believe that leadership requires a level of transparency so that you can connect with your constituents. And I think that I had my own company that I did personal finance and coaching.
Yep.
And I think that in order to connect with those individuals, I had to become transparent, because people want to work with people that they know that they can relate to, not sitting back, just delving out information. When it comes to the mortgage industry, there is a huge disparity between minority as well as millennial home ownership as it compares to other demographics and other social, classifications. And so for me, it was very important to make the industry relatable. I think sometimes because the industry has a specific tone to it, it doesn't always make it inviting for people to come in and say, hey, I think I can do that too. And so I think that's just a part of the brand. It's also just me being myself.
Right.
I realized that in the early months of coming on and being an independent person within this company, I tried to really do things the conventional way, and I wasn't comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that one of the key factors to being somewhat successful is that I chose just to be me, and and that's what people have connected with. And that goes back to transparency and being willing to tell portions of my stories freely.
This is the power of what there's 7 master steps we talk about in our core process, and one of them is called congruence, right? It's when the inside matches the outside, and that's what you're talking about. When people, they don't understand it, society nowadays is craving authenticity. We're tired of that stuffy, cool, this is why I have a fish tank that's, half dirty still. I got to clean it. It's because it's the way my office
Right.
is, and I need to buy him a bigger tank. By the way, look how big that fish is.
That is huge. Yeah, he definitely needs a bigger team.
He's mad. He keeps moving all the rocks around. But that authenticity, just being normal, helps people be relatable, like you said. And you used a word, by the way, that I don't think I've ever heard in this kind of setting at all. You used constituents, which I think is kind of cool, because it gives a sense that you are in fact, I don't want to say it's like a political thing, but you are in fact branding yourself, and you feel somewhat obligated to be a part of helping and leading and guiding and growing your community.
Yeah, I do agree, and I don't honestly think I've always felt that way in some sense. And honestly, when I got into this industry, there's a lot of people that do what I do, and we all basically have access to the same products. The things that may separate us will be service, and a company model. But for the most part, you have to find a niche. And honestly, I never expected to hone in on my niche. It was actually given to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I would like to believe that I am a person who is a representation of what happens when you make a decision to do better.
Right.
And then what that can, and be a beacon for others who choose to do the same.
Right. I love it. So let me get into some of the nuts and bolts. Do you have a system for yourself with, I get a new lead from online, or how do you track and manage some of this stuff? And I know you don't want, I don't want to give all your secrets,
No.
but just how do you manage some of, because you're dealing with a pretty good volume of people that you're following up with. Not everybody qualifies, so I know you're working to help them along the way. How do you manage to keep people in the pipeline?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think that is something that I am focused right now on developing and maybe fine tuning. Like I said, 2019 was really about survival mode, and then really just, like survival, but also just figuring it out. So sometimes you just throw yourself into the fire, and then you just you manage it. But then when you come out, you go, okay, what could I have done completely different? Because there are some things that slip through the cracks, or things like that. Or you weren't necessarily prepared for the increase, so it kind of made it maybe a little bit more of a challenge than it needed to be. So one of the things that I did earlier this year was I created a lead intake form. A lot of times in our industry, you answer the same questions every day. Hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm interested in buying a home. What do I need to do? Where do I need to start? And, I've learned that I don't have enough time to have the same conversation with 5 people every single day.
Right.
And so I developed this form, just right on using Google Forms. And what it does is it captures people's information. And it asks them some key questions that I have identified that are important for me to know how to help them. It's not an application, so it's not pulling their credit. So it does a couple things. Number one, it helps to identify who's serious among the serious, because if you'll take the time to fill out the form, then it shows that there is some level of intent. Number two, it gives me enough information to determine where do I prioritize that lead. Is it a hot, like, let's jump on it right now? Or is it something that I tell you and say, hey, can you give me a week or two to follow up with you?
Mhm.
Because I know that we're not dealing with a right now borrower. We may need a game plan going forward. It also helps me to be able to keep a track more of leads that are coming in. So I think that is one resource and one thing that I'm doing. I was just talking with an agent this morning. Sometimes it's a little tough capturing or tracking leads because they can come from text message, they can come from Facebook Messenger,
Yes.
they
Yep.
can come from through email. So I think also now trying to find a way to channel that, especially for real estate referrals, where people have multiple levels of contact.
Mhm.
Um, so that is something that I'm working on getting better at, and probably could be a weak point to what I do. Um,
Well, and you know, that's part of, I guess, you know, this is part of the growth going from one year to the next. And this is the kind of stuff that people don't stop long enough to think. They'll end up just plateauing. So if
correct.
you go back and do like you just said, let me see what I can work on. And as long as we're improving, we're making progress. And one of the big things that we constantly are talking about is progress is greater than achievement. So I love the fact that you are focused on progress. So let me move forward here. From a customer service perspective, I'm going to assume, maybe you can correct me, um, part of the reason why you're at the mortgage company you're with is because of the back end service. One, leverage for you, and two, is for the customer experience. So I'm going to assume that that's already in place. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. If
Okay.
I understand, I don't think I picked up on the question. Is what already in place?
The customer service experience.
Well, I am the customer service experience.
Okay. Okay.
The borrower really doesn't talk to. I have an assistant now. I have qualified to have an assistant, but for the most part, I am the only experience that the borrower gets to touch. So,
Okay. So what? How long into this process before you got an assistant?
I in December I qualified for December,
Okay.
starting this past December. So, yeah.
Okay. So we got to, so in reference to the experience side of our business, our customer relationship, if you will, um, what what were we doing in 2019, and what have we adjusted for 2020? I think you just alluded to part of it. You got yourself some leverage to help heighten the service.
Yeah, I think that was big. My assistant helps more on the back end, so I still do all the front end work. And so that helps to free me up where I don't necessarily have to focus so much on back end once we get there. Um, what am I doing differently? That's a great question. Um,
I mean, December was only like 2 weeks ago. So,
it was. I think it's just giving people more of me. Accessibility is really important. I'm in a very competitive market, and I have to be able to. There are big banks that could, beat me hands down on a deal. But what I have to be able to, number one, I have to be able to connect with that person directly to them. They're not alone at all. I have
mhm,
to connect with them. And then the value proposition has to be there where you would choose someone with a slightly higher interest rate simply because they're accessible, they're personable. I sell the fact that I'm in your community, so I'm invested in what you have going on. And then also me, my knowledge, my processes. I think the biggest adjustment or business lesson that I learned from 2019, I'm not perfect. And sometimes I think that in having that, being that key customer service person and being in a competitive market, I've taken a lot of emotional hits because I felt like I had to be perfect.
mm,
And if I made a mistake, then it would detract away from, you know, I don't know, my worth or my value to
mhm.
people. And so I think that's a huge point of ownership that I've had to take. Like, I'm not perfect. I can strive to perfect what I do, but I'm not perfect. And to just to give people me. I
That's
hope that
a
answered
big
the
shift.
question.
Yeah, that's a big shift. So the experience piece, I think, like you said, it still ties into your culture, and it still ties into your marketing and branding. You're just carrying it through, which, by the way, there's a reason I go through this order, and you are in fact rolling it out exactly how we operate. So you operate out of your culture. That's how we attract people with our sales. And then of course that bleeds into our service. So then that leads us to number 4. So you've done all that. And number 4 has to do with what we call expertise. So knowing your craft, understanding the mortgage industry, even the personal growth aspect of all of it. What do you have in place? Well, I guess 2019, you got yourself up and running. So there's a learning curve there. And then what are you doing in 2020 that's going to help continue to grow your expertise in your industry and just in general with your business and so on?
Yeah, I actually had a conversation earlier about that today. I think the biggest thing is like, number one, you can never feel like you know everything because our industry changes on a daily basis.
Oh yeah.
I think one thing that I will begin to incorporate is setting aside time every day to actually study something in my business. Whether it's, looking at the market reports, understanding where rates are coming from, or looking at a new product that I may not already be familiar with, or brushing back up on products that I am. The other thing is that my company has a Facebook group where all loan officers from across the nation come together to interact. And I actually spend time in that group on a daily basis, just reading the various scenarios that other people present, so that if it ever comes up for me, I can already feel like I'm prepared to be able to tackle it.
Yeah.
And so if I see something in that I'm not familiar with, I go in and I kind of study that. But definitely building in at least an hour a day that I'm kind of focused in on learning something. And then I think the best key to learning is being able to repeat that. And so I'm looking to do courses where we teach real estate agents about different aspects of financing, things like that.
Yeah, I've learned too that the fastest way to learn anything is to teach it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So that's your expertise, and that's how you grow. The last portion of this, number 5, is kind of we call it the executive. It has to do with your planning, the legal part, if you will, and all that's covered for you with your company. Probably the easiest way to bring this up would be there's 3 major resources that we focus on in this area, and that's time, which has to do with your calendar and how you manage yourself, money, managing money and how you do that with your business, and then people. If you're going to hire people, if you're going to bring people in, bring people out, that kind of thing, it has to do with the planning aspect of the whole thing and then executing. So where do you want to jump into that?
I think honestly, those are the biggest areas that in January of being not only just reflective, but forward thinking, those actually are the pillars of where my attention has gone. Number one, time. Time blocking and management is something that I certainly can take a million courses on and probably still not excel. And so that's something that I do want to get better at, not just within my industry, but within my job, but balancing that with the other responsibilities that I have. I am a basketball coach. And so knowing that, in a couple months, I'm getting ready to go into our travel season where my time commitment that I have for my role will heavily rely on me being able to get more done in less hours and still not make anyone feel as if I am not accessible or available. When it comes to the money part, understanding that the business does have cycles and that what you do today will show, or what you don't do today, you'll see it in a couple months. And so on a personal level, really getting back to my money management habits that kind of seem to have fallen away in the earlier part of 2019, being more conscious of my daily spending, even if, it's not all going, instead of maybe giving $1,000 to 10 people every month, I may have to limit myself on, what I could do in a certain time frame. Building my nest egg, I think, is important. And then as far as and then money, actually knowing what to invest in. A lot of people will approach you in this business to be sponsors. I got a request just this morning to sponsor a wrestling event that was $375. I'm just like, unfortunately, that doesn't connect with my passions. I had to turn it down. In the past, I might have sat long and hard and thought about it. And so managing the idea that money is infinite if I make it. But if the cycles don't allow that to happen, then I have to still be able to survive and thrive. And then the other part was time, money, and people. I think eventually the goal is to build a team. I would love to be able to get someone to manage my social media. I would love to have someone who can follow up on leads. I would love to have someone that when an application comes in, they immediately reach out to that person, introduce, the team, let them know what the expectations are. Those are things I would love to be able to build into place. So I think that is a goal, that by the end of the year to have enough production where I could bring in an intern or bring in someone who could help in those spaces.
How do you set goals? I think because there's so many ways that people do this. How do you, did you just wake up and say 2020, I'm going to make X amount of money. I want to help X number of people. How did you come up with how do you set goals?
I think that is one way. But I think what I ended up doing as far as, everything comes back to money. And so at the beginning of the year, I sat down and I wrote down all of my expenses as they were currently. Kind of wrote out some of the plans that I had, as far as, savings, investments. This is a year that I want to kind of throw some investment opportunities into real estate world in there. So just understanding those numbers. And I sat down and kind of wrote what those things I think would cost. And then so I did a back end analysis into, okay, this is how much I need to earn per month, which turns into how much I need to earn on an annual basis. And then I flipped that into, okay, well, if I make, how many deals do I have to close at what average volume to get there? So I throw a number out there for sure, because sometimes it sounds good, but then I also had to sit down and do the work to make sure that it works.
You're steps ahead of most people, by the way, because not that there's necessarily a right way or wrong way. I just know that there's effective ways and there's ineffective ways. I've seen so many people that just set numbers. Some of them just do, hey, I made 100,000 this year. I want to increase by 25%. So I'm going to make 125. They create these little numbers, or they just say, I want to double, and have no reason to do it. And so like a case, somebody says I made 100, I want to make 200. I always ask the question, so what are you going to do with an extra $8,300 a month? And they're usually going, well, there's a lot of things I could do. Well, if you can't tell me what it's going to be, then you're going to have a hard time when things get difficult in the business. You're not going to probably get up and go make it happen because you don't have anything attached to it.
I think that's important for me. And I actually, when I first got to my current company and being independent, I had no idea what a goal, like how to set a goal, because honestly, I didn't know what the possibilities were.
Yeah.
And I think that I am a type of person that I have to connect emotionally with anything that I do. If you tell me to go out and do 10 million in volume, I'm going to be like, okay, right. And I may or may not accomplish it. So this year, and here we go. So one of the things that I had to shift to in 2020 is really identifying my why. And maybe not in the sense that most people talk about a why. What is that thing that makes you wake up every morning? I haven't identified that why yet. I think, but what I have identified is the things that I want to accomplish and the people that I want to be able to serve and the things that I want to be able to do. And those are more or less my motivators. Okay, if I don't do this, then I can't accomplish this.
Yeah. I love it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you have become self-aware of this subject. The truth is we don't do what we think.
Right.
We do what we feel.
Right.
So you become self-aware enough to know that the only way that you'll actually go make a goal happen is when you emotionally connect to it. I call it a juice rating. if it doesn't juice you, it's not going to probably move you.
Right.
So you can tweet me on that. So if you,
I have to figure out how to use Twitter.
if the truth is that if we, if we did what we thought, we'd all be skinny and rich.
I agree.
We don't. We do what we feel. Right.
Absolutely.
I love it. So you create an association where you're emotionally connected to the outcome, and so you set goals. You got some numbers down. You broke it down, and then you got to work in 2020. So I absolutely love it. So it has been an extraordinary pleasure. Do you have any piece of advice? Let's say somebody's looking to get into the maybe they got a job and they're looking to make the move like you did. That was a big shift. Any advice on making that move? And then any advice for moving forward despite the challenges along the way?
I think that the first thing is that you have to listen to yourself and believe in yourself. If you are waking up on a daily basis and going someplace or doing something that you are not connected to, it does not feel good, it does not inspire you, it doesn't juice you up, then the first step is just honestly being honest about that. Now, that doesn't mean that you run out and just quit and you don't have a game plan, but I think that once you identify that, use that as a motivation or energy. Find what works for you and put out there in the atmosphere what you are looking for. And then create the environment around you to where you can be successful. Everybody is not going to understand your decision. Everybody is not going to respect your decision, but ultimately you have to be whole in it. I enjoyed not working for 4 months. It was my complete choice. I had a job offer before I even resigned, but for me, it was important to take that step back. So know what's important to you. As far as moving forward, despite the challenges, I would honestly say that you have to realize that without challenges, you don't become a better person. You don't become better. And the challenges are there to sometimes as a test of will versus your skill. And identifying, again, that's where you go back to, why am I doing this? Like, what am I shifting to? Making sure that your environment is strong, that you have people that you can lean on and say, hey, listen, I'm not doing so well right now, or can I get a motivation boost? And they're there not to tell you what to do, but to give you a little oomph to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately it's just about also ignoring the challenges. A lot of times we let challenges actually infiltrate our mind system. Our bodies are just kind of used to doing what we were doing. And so if we don't change our mind, our bodies never change and we end up with the same results. And so understanding that the challenges are designed to, I believe challenges are designed to defeat you. And you have to push forward despite that. Faith is important. A plan is important. And people around you are important. So just keep pushing.
So, okay, I don't know if you realize that you just actually summarized it for me. I had written down just about every little step, and you just summarized it perfectly, because you start off saying believe in yourself. Then you said make a decision, right? Make a decision, and then get with the right people. That was kind of that's what you originally said. And then you just summarize it by saying faith, right? Plan, people.
Yeah.
I love it. So assuming somebody wants to get in touch with you, they want to just have a business conversation, they want to get to know you, maybe they're hearing this and they're somewhere close to you and they want to do a mortgage with you, whatever. What's the best way to get in touch with Kalendra Thompson?
Yeah, absolutely. So I service all of South Carolina for your home lending needs, and I'm always available for conversations and consultations. You can reach me via phone at 803-983-5967, on Facebook at Kalendra Thompson, Loan Officer Movement Mortgage, 920-873. I know that's a lot. Or you can send me a contact at KalendraThompson.com.
KalendraThompson.com.
Yes, that would have been the easier way, right?
No, that's okay. That's okay. What was that phone number again, real quick?
803-983-5967, available for text message or phone calls.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Kalendra. Just stick with me. I'm going to hit the stop record thing on here. But I am extremely grateful for taking the time for the Momentum Tribe and anyone else that wants to watch and learn more about how they can grow from one place to the next.
Thank you, Spencer.